My name is Adrian Nagorski, and thank you very much for joining us for this exciting webinar on how to manage business rules effectively. This year's BBC conference was very inspirational, and based on the feedback we received, one of the hottest topics was managing business rules and the challenges of managing them. So we decided to invite you for this private webinar on how to overcome these challenges and what are the best practices around managing business rules. So just a few housekeeping items before we start. We are recording the session. So if you need to jump off for any reason, don't worry, I'll be emailing out the recording after the session. There is a space at the bottom for your questions, and if we don't get a chance to address them during this session, I'll follow up personally via email. Golly, Head of Customer Service, is taking care of chat today. I want to briefly introduce you to FlexRule. We are headquartered in Melbourne, Australia. Our mission is to empower leaders, business, operation, and IT in organizations to improve the speed and quality of key business decisions in changing environments. We provide a decision intelligence platform, a decision management suite guided by the methodology called decision-centric approach. Presenting today is our head of technology, Arash Aglara. He is a thought leader on decision intelligence, and he posts daily insights on LinkedIn. So I invite you to follow him on LinkedIn. I'll leave a link in the chat box. So to start this exciting webinar, I hand over to Arash. Sir, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is a very exciting webinar, and of course, business rules are not necessarily the hot topic when it comes to technology and organizations, but they're always there and they guide us through different steps and stages of the things that we do. So let me start sharing my screen.
Yes.
Excellent. Now, based on the conversation we had live online with many of the people attended to the conference, we decided to run this webinar to talk about why and how we need to manage business rules. Just quickly before we go through this particular session, I just want to talk about a little bit of the reason behind why do we exist as the company FlexRule. So we do exist because we want to enable organizations to adapt and adjust in changing environments. And speaking of the change, business rules changing always, all the time, because of different reasons. It might be regulation and law changes, it might be organization policy changes, it may be the way we work together in organization changes. And business rules are there to guide us and ensure the consistency and quality of the outcome of the work we do, particularly when it comes to decision making. They shape our judgment and our decisions. And when they change, we need to make sure they are updated across all processes, application, workflows, customer touch points, interactions, so on and so forth. And if we look at it, it's across all different areas of the organizations. This process to make sure they are consistent across all the touch points is called business rules management. So that's why we need to make sure we manage them. So how does that look like? Because business rules are across all the systems and processes and applications across organizations in all the touch points. And they change quite a lot. So the only way we can manage them, ensuring they are still updated and all the consistency and quality of the outcome are there, we need to separate them from applications and processes and systems that are business rules are encoded inside those processes and applications. So the first step is to separate the life cycle of the business rules from the processes and applications. Now, once we've done that, and this is not an easy way to do it, there is no easy way to do it. We talk about it in a couple of next slides. Imagine we did that. Now, what's the next step? So we need to model those business rules. And by modeling, we mean to create a very explanatory document that tells what are those business rules in those specific scenarios. That's called modeling business rules. It's very different from documenting them, because when you do document, you use Word or Excel or Confluence or wherever it is. Still, that's a step through the modeling of business rules, but modeling is giving more details on how they execute, where they execute, and what are the steps of those execution when we want to enforce them into our environment. Now, once we've done that modeling, we need to test them with the live scenarios. So the testing is part of this rules management process. So we separated them, we modeled them, we tested them. Now we need to enforce them as part of those processes and applications and the workflow we have in organizations, in the touch points we have with clients, in the underwriting, in the adjudication, in pricing. So these rules, now that are separated, needs to be enforced as part of that workflow and processes and applications. And then we did all of that because they changed. So when they change, we can go to one place that they're all there and we can easily update them. And when we update them, we have to go back into the model. We do our adjustment, we create new rules, we do everything we need to do about those particular scenarios which involve the rules. And then again, it goes around this the cycle of the rules management. So we test them, we enforce them, and this cycle goes on for many, many years until those scenario changes and until we require to do entirely a new process, which then if we do that new process, new applications, new scenarios, we need to be aware that we don't have to, and we should not embed those business rules inside them. So the first step of the separate business rules from life cycle of them from the application and processes doesn't need to happen always. So we separate them because they exist already in our systems. We model them, we test them, we enforce them, and we update them. We keep updating them. So there are many different approaches to implement this process. This does not necessarily require any specific technology, although technology helps, as we know. Now, when it comes to different approaches, there are many different ways to do this, to implement this rules management process, and there are pros and cons against each of them. So these are three alternatives, and not necessarily all the alternatives covers all the stages of the process we talked. So the first thing is, because business rules are across all the touch points with the clients across all the processes and applications, and we need to enforce them, the first and very easiest way is to hard code them inside the processes. So at least we get the consistency for the first couple of times, because they keep changing. So we need to go back and update the applications and processes. And that's one of the drawbacks of hard coding into applications, but partially allows us to support at least the enforcement of the business rules in the rules management process. As I mentioned, the problem with that is now it is hard coded in the application and processes and systems and down the track very soon, if not tomorrow, in a week time, we need to change them. We have to go back and do it again. The problem with that is it is heavily relies on software development practices and application building and agile methodology and all of those wonderful stuff, which already there are a big backlog for IT and software development team. So they don't have enough time to catch up with the changes of the business rules, because business rules change quite often for different reasons, as we mentioned. The problem for this approach is heavily reliance on IT, which they don't have enough time. And the second issue with this approach is they are not the domain expert in that particular area in organization. Let's say underwriting, adjudication. There are so many rules there, but they are not the underwriter person. So they lost in translation and transferring all the knowledge that they require for implementing rules to IT and system developers are a very heavy process and procedures. So that also takes time, and loss in translation always happens. So the best second approach is to make sure business, domain experts, operation can model and manage those business rules. Now, business rules management systems are the best next option after hard coding it. So that allows partially the full cycle of the rules management. They are there to allow non-technical people, domain experts, operation, to build those and model those business rules. So the first step was modeling business rules. So they are very easy and business-friendly modeling techniques, and we're going to talk about that, which are part of the solutions as part of the business rules management system. So they're not, when we model the business rules, you don't necessarily need to rely on IT and system developers. The drawbacks of this technology is it heavily relies on starting with business rules. The issue with that is, although we want to manage business rules, if we start immediately with business rules, because business rules are having so much details, they are very granular. So it makes a very big setup upfront. So it is very hard to do all the setup to get to the point that you need to write the business rules. And once you've done that, you're still focusing on business rules, and you have a repository of all the rules you need. And that leads to a problem when we talk about it. It's called big bucket of rules problem. I'll make sure Adrian shares a couple of articles about this issue as well. Essentially, it means you have a big bucket full of rules, and you need to sit there and now manage that bucket in different scenarios. When they change, you need to find the relevant rules. If it is handful of rules, it's fine. You don't need even the system, but you're there because you have more than hundreds or thousand rules. And when they grow, it becomes very hard to find them, manage them, group them for specific scenarios. And when you need to update them, finding the dependencies between rules and finding the impact of the change across different scenarios becomes very, very hard. The next option to address the big bucket of rules problem is the decision management suite option. So decision management suite doesn't focus necessarily on rules. It starts with the high level, which is that specific scenario you want to manage. And then within that scenario, there are rules there. So there is no big bucket for all the rules in organizations. They are already categorized based on scenarios. And those scenarios are called decision. Hence, it is a decision management suite. So that allows you to overcome the complexity of managing individual rules. But when we want to enforce the rules, when we are managing them as part of the rules management process we discussed, this enforcement requires so many things happen prior and after you modeled and tested your rules. Now, all of these tools, they are generally good in management part of it, the modeling part and testing part of it. They're not necessarily easy to operationalize those rules and decisions that you've made. And operationalizing them, that means you need to enforce them across systems and processes and different touch points with the clients in your organization. And that becomes again heavily reliance on IT. So if you do your update the rules quickly and it is all fine and it is sitting with you, but it's not enforced throughout different application and processes and systems, still doesn't do the job that we wanted to do. Still, the quality of the outcome for decisions across touch points with organizations are not updated because they're not operationalized yet. So this is one of the big drawbacks of the traditional decision management suite, which is operationalization of the rules. Also, more modern tools in the decision management suite have better support for understanding the dependencies between rules and decisions, understanding of how you can change a decision and how it impacts the upstream of the processes and systems. There are many things that you need to be aware of when you are modeling business decisions in terms of the context for that business decisions, in terms of preparing the data to go through the decision, to go through the rules and create the outcome you want. So all of these pre-work and after work for operationalization and pre-work for data extraction and data gathering and preparation for the execution are really lacking in decision management suite. So that's where we, as FlexRule company, we created an end-to-end decision management suite to cover the drawbacks and lack of functionality for pre-work and operationalization of the decisions as part of our platform. So if we look at now the full picture we discussed, we separate the rules from the applications and processes and systems. We model them outside of IT, within the operation, SMEs, and the domain experts of those particular area. Let's say that's underwriting or claim or adjudication or pricing or wherever it is. So the people that they have those domain expertise with the very visual, easy way they can do model those rules. Then they can still in the platform test them in live scenarios. And then they can easily, with the end-to-end management, decision management suite, they can operationalize them. They don't need to go back to IT and DevOps and do many system integration and coding to enforce those decisions and rules. And when they change, they can go back to that platform and update them very easily without relying again on IT because they did it in the first place as part of the modeling anyway. Now that's where the benefit of management of the rules comes into the picture. So you separate entirely the life cycle of the rules and decisions from applications, and you empower people that they have the knowledge about those areas to do that management themselves. So it is always an alternative rather than using any external vendor solution. The IT builds that solution themselves. Of course, it's an option always. There are always the pros and cons when it comes to this scenario. When IT team inside organizations wants to build something, they're not freely sitting there doing nothing. They are always having their own job, their own backlog. So that's an extra work for IT always when they want to build something. Now, in terms of the comparison with the existing ready-to-go solution, the time to market is a bottleneck there because it takes time to build it in the first place, and they don't have the time to build it. And that is the time to market for ensuring the consistency of the rules across all the processes and applications happens as soon as they need it. There is a cost associated with building it anyway, because we have IT team and they can build everything. Doesn't mean it's for free. They still work in the organization. They can do more strategic work for organization rather than building the rules inside applications. And when IT builds, because of the time pressure that they build the immediate requirements. They cannot invest enough for the future proofness of the solution. So we need this requirement, we build it, we deploy it, and that's fine. But rules changes, the requirement changes, the nature of the rule changes, the nature of the decision changes, the integration point changes. And that becomes a catch-up game for IT to keep this rules management, in-house built rules management, always updated with different types and kind of rules that they need to be involved to support them. And because of the time pressure and cost of building this solution, it's not always the best for outside of IT usages. So it's built by IT generally for IT, not built by IT for SMEs and operations and business people. Now, that's really the comparison between in-house built and ready use to go solutions. So if there is no question about the process and alternative, I can show you how it looks like when you use FlexRule in managing rules and decisions. And if you have any questions, as Adrian mentioned, just put it in the chat window in QA session. So FlexRule platform is a unified, integrated, simple platform. We intentionally built it unified because it makes the user experience, the workflow easier. It is integrated because it requires to do all of those pre-work and after work. For pre-work is the data preparation, connecting to system, gathering information for processing and execution the rules, and then integrating the result back into the applications and processes and systems. So it is a seamless, integrated, unified platform, which is very simple. We intentionally built it to be used with outside of IT groups. So generally, most of our users are from domain experts, SME subject matter experts, operation team, and generally business team rather than IT. Now, we intentionally, when you look at our platform, we intentionally built it to look like the applications you use every day. Some part of it looks like Excel, some part of it looks like Visio, some part of it looks like the similar applications that you're dealing with every day, like Tableau or Power BI, and etc. And this is intentional because then you can leverage those knowledge that you have, how to you use those tools as part of your day-to-day to use with the similar behavior user experience in our platform to manage the business roles, and that across all the stages of the management, from modeling, testing, enforcing, and updating the rules. So how does it look like when we're talking about the rules management, and we talked about the benefit of not managing the rules directly, rather managing the scenarios that include the rules, which is the decisions. How does it look like? So it looks like a graphical user interface, which you can see on my screen. So it's a very easy way to drag and drop and build up that workflow for that specific scenario. I called it workflow because many people are familiar with that term, but it's not at the core of it. It's not a workflow when you do model business decisions. They are very different from workflow and processes. So this graphical user interface allows you to build the decisioning scenario. It's called Framing Business Decisions, and I make sure Adrian shares a couple of these articles later on when he will send the email out for sharing this presentation. Now you model this particular business decision with decomposing all of these smaller, with decomposing a complex business decision, calculating health premium, to more smaller, easier understand and easier to use decision units. And then you need to specify the inputs to those decisions. So rules require input, therefore the decision that contain that rule requires that input. And the input of those decisions are in a specific structure. So you define those structure, again, with the visual, easy way of modeling that input structure for the decision. Now, each nodes, each rectangles in this graph represent a set of rules. And there are many different ways our platform allows you to model rules. What you see at the screen is called decision table. It looks like Excel, as I mentioned intentionally. And that allows you to build rules around those specific rectangles or decision node as part of the decision graph. So decision table is one of the ways to modeling business rules. We also allow the natural language way of modeling business rules, meaning you can define your business glossaries and business terminologies and fact concept using our platform. And then you can use those ubiquitous language of that specific domain, for example, in claiming, pricing, and adjudication. Those business terminologies are used to model business rules. And last but not least, technique to model business rules is using the tree and subtree approach. In DMN, it's called box expression. And we'll talk about a little bit about DMN in a minute. So that's the way to build a very complex calculation intensive business rules, for example, for calculating the premium of a car, which involves different formulation and different mathematical operation to build that hierarchical business rules. Now, just to quickly summarize, you build your decisioning scenario called framing business decision. As the output of that, it becomes a decision graph. Each node on the decision graph for execution requires the input. So you model how the input structures are. Then you can go ahead and you can create rules around that specific individual, isolated, connected to the next decision scenario. Now, there are many different techniques of rules modeling. We have many ways of modeling the rules in the platform, but the most common one is a decision table. And then you can use your own ubiquitous language to model business rules, which is called natural language. For complex hierarchical rules, you can use tree and subtree. And that's how you model business rules across all of your scenarios and processes and applications. Generally, many of our clients are using this approach, this rules management process, starting from the scenario down to individual rules, from decision to rules, across many different industries. One of the benefits of using FlexRule is that FlexRule is DMN compliance level 3, conformance level 3. And what that means is DMN stands for decision management notation. It's a standard to manage business decisions and model business rules around them. And once you've done that, you can bring other rules management output. If you do it in some other platforms, you can bring it easily to FlexRule. And if you want to leave FlexRule, you can export it and bring it to other platforms that you want. So being a DMN conformance is very important when it comes to rules management. So I make sure Adrian shares a couple of scenarios and a couple of articles with you. And if you have questions, we are still a couple of minutes, I'm happy to answer them. And thank you very much for your time. I'm still here to answer any questions.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending today. I'll definitely follow up with the items, framing business decisions, the big bucket of rules. So thank you very much for your time.